Tonight on NewsWatch, the president and the economy. What Mr. Obama has to say about the future of America.
And the changing face of Egypt, the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the growing Islamic influence.
Plus, how truck drivers are helping in the fight against human trafficking. All this and much more tonight on NewsWatch. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith.
And I'm Mark Martin. Now that the election is over, all eyes are on the economy.
Bipartisan bickering has been a barrier as the country heads towards the so-called fiscal cliff. But now President Obama says it's time to act.
George Thomas has more in tonight's top story.
72 hours after winning a second term, President Obama returns to a capital city once again in political gridlock.
We can't just cut our way to prosperity. If we're serious about reducing the deficit,
Democrats and Republicans are drawing battle lines on how best to reduce the national debt and avoid the so-called fiscal cliff. On Thursday, Republican House Speaker John Boehner said raising taxes was not the answer.
24 hours after I spoke, the Congressional Budget Office released a report showing that the most harmful consequences of the fiscal cliff come from increasing tax rates.
But Democrats insist they have a mandate from voters to raise taxes on the wealthy.
There was a message sent to us by the American people based on the campaign. And that is, people making all this money have to contribute a little bit more.
Exit polls show the economy was the top issue for 6 out of 10 voters Tuesday, and a lot is at stake, and time is tight. Bush-era tax cuts are set to expire at the end of 2012, along with deep cuts in defense and domestic spending. Unless a deal is struck, every American taxpayer will see a substantial increase in their taxes starting January 1st. Experts say that could barrel the economy back into recession and cost millions of jobs. To avoid the fiscal cliff, Republicans are proposing a 1-year extension of all Bush-era tax cuts, and they say they'd be open to new tax revenues, but only under the right conditions.
It's clear that there are a lot of special interest loopholes in the tax code, both corporate and personal. It's also clear that there are all kinds of deductions, some of which make sense, others don't.
Meanwhile, U.S. and global stock markets took a beating this week as investors continue to worry about Washington's ability to find a solution to the fiscal cliff. George Thomas, CBN News.
CBN congressional correspondent John Jessup joins us live from Capitol Hill. John, you were at the press conference earlier with Speaker Boehner. He said he'd be open to more revenue. Does that mean increased taxes?
Not quite. You know, Wendy, I think for most of us, when we hear increased revenues, we do automatically think of increased taxes. But Speaker Boehner really went out of his way to say that that's the wrong way to go. He pointed to 2 different surveys, one being from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office that suggests that increased taxes would shove the country back into recession and produce above 9% unemployment. He also pointed to another survey by Ernst & Young that suggests that higher tax rates would cut about 700,000 jobs for the economy. So again, he says that's the wrong way to go. What he's really talking about is tax reform, closing the loopholes for both corporate and individuals so that the government then can collect more money, and that's really what he's talking about with increased revenue.
Well, John, how likely is it that Republicans and Democrats will find a deal on which they can agree?
That's a good question. You know, I think it's a positive sign that you hear the 2 key negotiators, President Obama, who spoke earlier today, and of course Speaker Boehner, they're talking about room for common ground. Now, my inbox is filling up with different kinds of messages from Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and Senate Minority Leader, Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. They're taking more of the partisan stances, but I do think it's positive that both Boehner and President Obama are talking about common ground, and I think it's likely that they'll find it when it comes to tax reform and even some room on entitlement reform. The key question is how, because whatever they come up with, they'll have to sell to respective members of their parties. They'll have to tinker around with whatever negotiations come from their parties, and then they'll have to pass that plan. And that's asking a lot of this Congress. So I think what will end up happening is you'll probably see some key negotiations going on. And I think the key thing to watch is exactly how Speaker Boehner will be able to deliver votes, because today, when asked, he said, he's been able to pass whatever he and President Obama have come up with in the past, but he's also had to rely on Democrats Democratic votes, because there's been a lot of Republicans, particularly those Tea Party freshmen, who are just opposed to anything that would not cut enough out of this massive federal debt.
Now, what's the time frame we're looking at to avoid driving off or diving off that fiscal cliff?
You know, there's not a lot of time. There's only 7 weeks between now and the beginning of New Year. And Congress, or the House specifically, is only scheduled to be in session 4 out of those 7 weeks. Of course, they can change that, but that just only intensifies the pressure. I think what we're likely to see is a short-term framework so that this Congress will be able to so to speak, will pass the baton to the next Congress. That short-term framework will allow the next Congress to address some of the grand bargain type things. But, you know, the things that they're really looking at preventing are those tax hikes from kicking in, and also that massive spending cuts, both to the military and domestic programs, from kicking in beginning January 1st.
All right, lots of work ahead. John Jessup reporting from Capitol Hill for us. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you, Wendy.
Many religious groups are unhappy with that controversial Obamacare birth control mandate, even though there is a religious exemption in it. The problem, the administration interprets it so strictly, even some of the most religious companies in the country are not covered. And that's what Bible publisher Tyndale House argued today in a federal court. Lawyers for the company say if Tyndale is not covered, the religious exemption is almost laughable.
The federal government is saying that essentially all larger employers have to offer what they call preventive services for women, and they've defined that to include what we feel are services and drugs that cause abortions.
The judge said that he will issue a decision by next Friday, Friday of next week, on whether he will grant us an injunction to stop this mandate from forcing Tyndale House publishers to violate their religious beliefs.
The Obama administration insists all for-profit corporations are categorically non-religious, so cannot be exempted.
The Reverend Billy Graham is calling on Americans to pray for the country's leaders after this week's election. He says, quote, "Now with the votes counted, it is important to remember that whether we are personally pleased with the outcome or not, God wants us to pray for those chosen to be our leaders at the national, state, and local levels." Graham went on to say no election can solve America's problems, only God. The Reverend issued his statement and announced a year-long evangelism campaign that will end on his 95th birthday next November.
More than 500,000 people remain without power in New York and New Jersey and now face gas rationing.
Oh, it was great to have it, and then we lose it again. It was extremely frustrating.
The wires spark. Every day they spark from somewhere else. You don't know what's live.
This week's nor'easter blanketed the region with snow, triggering more power outages, and mounting gas shortages have led to long lines at the pump. Customers in New York City, Long Island, and New Jersey must follow a regulated odd-even numbering system to fill up on a specific day. CBN's Operation Blessing is in the region, offering aid to storm victims.
Operation Blessing is going to set up a table here. We're going to take work orders and start helping people gut their houses, clean their houses out, start putting their lives back together.
The damage estimate for Sandy is at around $50 billion. That makes it the second most expensive storm in U.S. history, right behind Hurricane Katrina. For more on what Operation Blessing is doing to aid victims and to find out how you can help, visit our website, cbnnews.com.
David Petraeus resigned today as director of the CIA after admitting to an extramarital affair. Petraeus said in a statement that he had shown extremely poor judgment. According to his resignation letter, Petraeus asked President Obama on Thursday to allow him to resign, and today the president accepted his resignation.
Anglican Christians have a new spiritual leader. Archbishop of Canterbury Rowan Williams retires this year. His successor is Bishop Justin Welby. He's a former oil executive and has only been a bishop for 1 year. He's said to be an opponent of same-sex marriage, but he said he's examining his own thinking prayerfully and carefully. That issue and the appointment of gay bishops have caused deep divisions within the Anglican Church. Queen Elizabeth approved Welby's appointment.
Coming up, the Islamization of Egypt. Gary Lane joins us to talk about what that means for Christians there.
It's probably something I've had for many years, and every year the PSA would be a little higher. I just kept kind of ignoring it. You know, one of those guy things. It'll go away. It'll go away. Finally, one day, Janet says, "You're going to the doctor." They did a blood test. My PSA was 14. I needed to get a second opinion, so we contacted Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
To find out more about Cancer Treatment Centers of America and our unique treatment options for complex and advanced stage cancer, go to cancercenter.com.
The really great thing is that you just go online, and if you have prostate or lung cancer or whatever, you can see what their survival rates are.
You can also check for participating insurance plans. Cancer Treatment Centers of America is different. You feel it the moment you call or walk into one of our hospitals. It's state-of-the-art medicine, unique treatment options, and a level of compassion that cannot be copied. Why? Our people. People who give you not only their expertise, but their humanity and the most thoughtful, well-organized, patient-centered care you'll find anywhere.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America go way beyond what normal hospitals do. I knew that they had the technology to take care of my cancer. It's a device called Calypso.
Calypso is GPS for the prostate. We're able to get 4-dimensional real-time tracking of prostate movement during radiation treatment.
It eliminates a lot of my side effects. It makes sense. It just makes sense. I own a deli. I'm back at work. My customers come in and say, "Gosh, you look good." And some of them say I look better now than I did before I left. I didn't expect to learn a lesson about how to treat people by being in a hospital. You can tell when somebody really cares.
Every minute counts when you're fighting complex or advanced stage cancer. So please call or visit cancercenter.com today. Appointments are available now. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits.
Welcome back. Thousands of Egyptian protesters filled Cairo's Tahrir Square today, demanding Sharia law be implemented. Demonstrators want the country's new constitution to be based on the rulings of Islamic law. This comes amidst controversy over the role of religion in shaping Egypt's future. Well, the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt has led to a mass exodus of Christians from that country.
But it doesn't mean the church is dead there. As Gary Lane reports, it may be on the verge of an awakening.
This is the scene in today's Egypt for those disagreeing with the new leadership. Pro-Muslim Brotherhood forces tear down a stage built by those opposing President Mohamed Morsi. Egypt is becoming more polarized as Islamists try to impose their beliefs on the society.
You have here an emboldened local Islamist, emboldened with the idea that one of their brethren is in power, to basically implement what they see as the rightful law or God's message on the ground without even the need of a government.
The creeping Islamization has Egypt's minority Coptic Christian community nervous. Many have already left the country, and more are expected to follow.
It's an exodus of biblical proportions just over the last 12 months.
Lord David Alton is with the human rights group Jubilee Campaign.
There have been a lot of killings, churches have been bombed, Christian women have been raped, people's properties have been confiscated, all sorts of things have taken place. It's one of the reasons why 100,000 Coptic Christians have fled the country.
We don't actually know the exact numbers. In my local church here in Fairfax, we've definitely seen a serious wave of Coptic immigration from Egypt since the revolution. And that's in one church in the U.S.
Armenian pastor Robert Zare Tashijan says some of his Cairo church members fled for the United States. That's not just Christians who are leaving.
I have Islam friends, they leave the country and go. They don't feel safe with coming area with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Many Egyptians remain because they cannot afford to go anywhere else. Tadros is concerned about a Christian brain and wealth drain.
In the sense of the better educated, the more well-off, the people that are the job creators, the ones that give the higher donations to the church as an institution, those guys will be the ones that will be leaving.
And that may mean less opportunity and help for needy Egyptian Christians. So what can be done to halt the exodus? In the final presidential debate, President Obama said, America expects the Egyptian government to protect the rights of non-Muslims.
They have to make sure that they take responsibility for protecting religious minorities. And we have put significant pressure on them to make sure they're doing that.
But Coptic leaders here in the United States call Mr. Obama's support for Egyptian Christians empty words. Lord Alton says American and Western aid to Egypt should be stopped unless the government upholds religious liberties.
We need to be insisting that this becomes a key question for Western governments. And so far, the evidence is not very encouraging.
Still, many Christians like these attending services at Cairo's Cave Church say they'll stay in Egypt. Father Simon Ibrahim says his church members are focused on God's promises.
He cares for us and will not forsake us. We believe in God's plan for Egypt and will follow it instead of any human plan.
And the rise of the Islamists and increased persecution is actually bringing Egyptian Christians closer together.
It's more unity than before in all the churches. They're doing a lot of prayer nights, meetings, talking about the future, giving hope for the people that God is in control.
Events like this one in the desert north of Cairo attracted more than 50,000 Egyptian Christians for 4 days of worship and prayer.
American Christians are very concerned about their brothers and sisters in Christ here in Egypt. What should they do?
We definitely need your prayers. The Lord tells us to pray for one another. You pray for us, and we will pray for you.
You can look at Coptic history with a sense of sadness at a continuous decline, but you can also look at it with the sense of how the hand of God has protected his people and made them survive through everything that they have been through.
Despite the mass exodus, many Coptic Christians believe the Egyptian church is growing stronger and will persevere, no matter what the future may bring.
And Gary Lane joins us now for more. Gary, it is a common theme that we keep hearing, that the church grows and becomes stronger in the face of persecution.
Sure.
Would you say that the Christians in Egypt are prepared to face what may come their way?
Mark, I would say they're probably the best prepared that you can be. No one welcomes persecution. But we've got to remember this church was one of the earliest churches in the world. It started about 43 A.D. The Apostle Mark founded it in Alexandria, Egypt, 10 years after Christ. And so this isn't the first time they've had persecution. They've experienced waves of persecution over the last 2,000 years.
What's going to happen to Christians if Sharia law is implemented?
Well, that's a good question. Now, the Islamists say, no, this will not apply to the Christians. But the Christians fear that, yes, it will apply to them, that they will once again be subjected to dhimitude status. That means second-class status where they have to even pay a tax, a jizya. And they don't want to do that, of course. And already we're seeing some women who are not covering their heads being harassed in the streets. Young women actually having acid thrown on them because they aren't covering their heads. This is what the future may hold for Christians if they have Sharia law in Egypt.
Now, I understand some Muslims are also leaving. What do they fear from the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, a lot of these Muslims are moderate, young people who were in Tahrir Square protesting, and they say, look, this isn't what we were fighting for. This is not what we had this revolution for. We wanted to have openness, a freer society, more secular society. We don't want to have Sharia imposed on us. So that's why many of them are even leaving.
Now, we've seen similar scenarios being played out in other countries in the region. How would you say Christians overall are doing in the Middle East?
Not well at all, not where these uprisings have taken place. We've seen in Iraq, of course, the church during the war there was oppressed. We're also seeing it in Syria. That's one of the main concerns right now, that those of us who watch what is happening around the world with persecution are very concerned about Syria. Let's just take one example. The city of Homs used to have 80,000 Christians there. Now there are only about 400. Many have fled. There was just a report within the last 2 weeks of a couple of pastors that were killed. Others have been kidnapped. And there was an 84-year-old man, one of the last in the center of the city of Homs, who was murdered simply because he remained and was going to take care of his handicapped son. And he was killed as well. So really concerned now about Syria and Christians who are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Many are living as refugees in their own country.
Okay. Gary Lane, as always, thank you for your insight. We appreciate it.
And we need to pray this Sunday for the persecuted church, International Day of Prayer.
Okay. That's good to know.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's on our website, too,
yes,
I'm sure.
Yes, it is on our website. We've been talking about it.
Great. And for more of Gary's insights, of course, you can check out his blog, The Global Lane. You can find that at our website, cbnnews.com. Wendy.
Up next, truckers and trafficking, why truck stops are key for cracking down on human trafficking.
Listen up for an amazing offer that can change the way you hear.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
Frustrated with your hearing? What did he say? Well, hear better now. Introducing the fully rechargeable MSA 30X, a revolutionary device that features the latest microsound amplification technology that can barely be seen. Independently tested to help you hear up to 30 times better. It turns ordinary hearing into extraordinary hearing. MSA 30X works by capturing and amplifying sound waves, yet its lightweight ergoacoustic design is discreet. It form-fits in and around either ear.
I forget I'm even wearing it.
And MSA 30X is powerful. Hear clearly in restaurants. Never miss another word on TV or at the movies.
My wife complains that I have the volume up on the TV too loud.
And I didn't want to be in the same room with them.
Now I can hear everything clearly.
Simply adjust the volume as you desire. Other units use so many batteries and they're difficult to change. But the MSA 30X is completely rechargeable. Simply plug it into the wall.
I tried other devices that had batteries, but they were always such a pain to change and so costly. But this is rechargeable, so I figure I save hundreds a year.
Bulky sound amplifiers can cost hundreds, but try MSA 30X for just $59.95 and we'll include a cleaning brush and 5 comfort tips. But wait, in this special TV offer, we'll cut the price in half. Now you can hear up to 30 times better for just $29.95. But there's even more. We'll double the offer free. Just pay additional processing and handling. Wear them both or give one to a loved one. Did you hear that? That's 2 MSA 30Xs for just $29.95. The MSA 30X Hear Better Now offer. Get 2 for just $29.95.
All I can say is just try it. It could change your life.
To order the MSA 30X sound amplifier, call 1-800-535-0654. That's 1-800-535-0654. Or you can go to MSA30X.com. Call or go online now.
Pope Benedict is speaking out against human trafficking. The Pope called the act barbarian and condemned the organized crime groups often behind trafficking. While speaking to members of Interpol, the Pope called for greater international cooperation to help fight organized crime and human trafficking. Here at home, new soldiers are joining the fight against human trafficking.
Yeah, activists are enlisting the nation's 3 million truck drivers. And as Heather Sells reports, they're taking action.
Each year, truck drivers rack up almost 400 billion miles transporting goods across the U.S. They see people in places that many of us never will. And that gave anti-trafficking activists an idea.
They're the eyes and ears of our nation's highways. They're out on those lots spending the night when they're on a long haul. And so they're able to capitalize on those moments.
Many drivers like Chris Pagans are willing and able to call authorities when they notice a young girl or woman who might be trafficked.
I think it's wrong. I just think it's wrong. People are not slaves, slavery's over with.
At least one teenage victim has gone public, thanking the truck driver who saved her.
911. A couple of girls at the TX at 167 trying to do business out here.
He called authorities after spotting the girl and her cousin at a truck stop.
If it wasn't for him calling the police and saying that she just doesn't look right there, I have no idea what would have happened.
Truck stops are often easy places for traffickers to operate. What happened to the 2 girls who were rescued is typical. Their traffickers kidnapped them, assaulted them, and then took them to truck stops every night, forcing them to meet a quota of customers.
Truckers Against Trafficking want to help more truckers understand the horror that's often right in front of them.
They were seeing girls out on the lots. They were irritated by them because they would say, oh, you get knocks on the cabs 15, 16 times a night when you're trying to sleep.
But with education, says Lieberg, truckers understand that their annoyance can be someone else's bondage.
What they started to see once they were learning about human trafficking was that those knocks might be desperation. I've got to meet this quota because my trafficker is going to beat me at the end of this night if I don't have a quota.
Now the group works with the trucking industry to spread the word. Their message, if you see something suspicious, call the National Trafficking Hotline. Their hope that with increased awareness and involvement, truckers can become a force in shutting down trafficking on our nation's highways.
Oh, that trucker. The one that made that phone call. I think about him all the time. I have never met him. I don't know who he is, but boy, I owe him a lot.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
CBNNews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
Efrem Graham, CBN News, New York.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore.
CBNNews.com at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see.
I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
Embassy in Washington, Eric Stackelbeck, CBN News.
The source for your news, CBNNews.com.
Listen up for an amazing offer that can change the way you hear.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that?
Frustrated with your hearing?
What did he say?
Well, hear better now. Introducing the fully rechargeable MSA 30X, a revolutionary device that features the latest microsound amplification technology that can barely be seen. Independently tested to help you hear up to 30 times better. It turns ordinary hearing into extraordinary hearing. MSA 30X works by capturing and amplifying sound waves, yet its lightweight ergoacoustic design is discreet. It form-fits in and around either ear.
I forget I'm even wearing it.
And MSA 30X is powerful. Hear clearly in restaurants. Never miss another word on TV or at the movies.
My wife complains that I have the volume up on the TV too loud.
And I didn't want to be in the same room with them.
Now I can hear everything clearly.
Simply adjust the volume as you desire. Other units use so many batteries and they're difficult to change. But the MSA 30X is completely rechargeable. Simply plug it into the wall.
I tried other devices that had batteries, but they were always such a pain to change and so costly. But this is rechargeable, so I figure I save hundreds a year.
Bulky sound amplifiers can cost hundreds, but try MSA 30X for just $59.95 and we'll include a cleaning brush and 5 comfort tips. But wait, in this special TV offer, we'll cut the price in half. Now you can hear up to 30 times better for just $29.95. But there's even more. We'll double the offer free. Just pay additional processing and handling. Wear them both or give one to a loved one. Did you hear that? That's 2 MSA 30Xs for just $29.95. The MSA 30X Hear Better Now offer. Get 2 for just $29.95.
All I can say is just try it. It could change your life.
To order the MSA 30X sound amplifier, call 1-800-535-0654. That's 1-800-535-0654. Or you can go to MSA30X.com. Call or go online now.
At the height of Hurricane Sandy, New York's Long Beach Fire Department lost 3 of its 4 engines.
But now some Louisiana firefighters are on the scene to help and return a gift that had first been donated to them, a fire truck.
We got to come up and help our friends, you know.
After 9/11, a Louisiana truck company donated the rig to New York City, and then when Hurricane Katrina hit, the city returned it. Now it's come full circle. The Louisiana Fire Department donated it back to New York. So, isn't that sweet?
That is. Firefighters are a tight community.
They really, really are. And we love them. They do a great job.
Very valuable. That's all for this edition of NewsWatch.
Remember, you can email us your comments and questions at newswatch@cbn.com. See you tomorrow.